You can learn the language of awareness and still use it to disappear. You can recognize patterns and still keep them intact by naming them beautifully. You can say you are observing, but the observation never reaches the part of you that actually chooses. That is where the difference begins. Not in what you know, but in what your knowing changes when the moment arrives. Avoidance rarely announces itself as fear. It often announces itself as wisdom, timing, boundaries, self-care, high vibration, neutrality. It learns your spiritual vocabulary and wears it like clean clothing. The first trap is subtle because it feels like progress. And the unspoken objection underneath is practical. If I feel better after I detach, why would I question it? Feeling better is not the same as being freer. Relief can come from release, but it can also come from retreat. Relief can be the nervous system finally regulating, but it can also be the nervous system shutting down to survive. Awareness does not only change mood, it changes capacity. It increases what you can hold without numbing. And that is why true awareness often feels heavier before it feels lighter. If you are honest, you have already felt the difference. There is a kind of observation that makes you more present, and there is a kind of observation that makes you less alive. One sharpens your contact with reality, the other dulls it. One increases responsibility, the other reduces it. The unspoken objection says, I cannot carry all of this, so I must step back, but stepping back becomes a pattern that never returns. Avoidance is often disguised as peace because your body has been trained to interpret intensity as danger. When you stop fighting, the system relaxes and you call it awakening. But sometimes you stopped fighting because you stopped caring, and the numbness is mistaken for serenity. Awareness does not require drama, but it does require warmth. It is intimate with what is real, and intimacy has sensation. There is also a deeper deceit that hides inside concepts. If you can explain your pain, you can sometimes avoid feeling it. If you can map your childhood, you can sometimes postpone the moment where the grief actually moves through your chest. If you can label the trigger, you can sometimes escape the vulnerability that the trigger is pointing to. The unspoken objection here is familiar. If I let myself feel it, I might break, so I will understand it instead. Understanding is not the enemy, but it becomes the enemy when it replaces contact. Avoidance turns insight into a shield. It produces beautiful narratives that keep you safe from the rawness of your own life. You learn why you are the way you are, and you stop there. Awareness keeps going. It asks what you are doing now with what you know. Because what you do now is the only place the pattern is alive. You can see this most clearly in conflict. Avoidance says, I am not triggered, I am just observing. But if you are truly observing, you are also able to speak cleanly. You are able to state what is true without attacking. You are able to stay engaged without losing your center. If your observation makes you silent out of fear, or cold out of protection, then the observation has become a hiding place. Some people call it letting go when it is actually giving up. They call it surrender when it is actually suppression. They call it boundaries when it is actually punishment. The unspoken objection beneath those moves is not evil. It is exhausted. I do not know how to stay open and safe at the same time. That is not solved by detaching more. That is solved by learning regulation and communication, then testing both in the same room. Avoidance loves the future. It promises that you will speak later, that you will address it later, that you will heal it later, that you will forgive later. It keeps postponing the moment of contact because contact is where risk lives. Awareness lives in contact because contact is where reality can answer you. The difference is not moral, it is mechanical. One delays consequence, the other invites it. If you want a practical test, look at what your so-called awareness produces in your day. Does it increase your ability to do the hard, honest thing you have been avoiding? Does it lead you toward a conversation you keep postponing? Does it make you more consistent with sleep, food, movement, attention, and truth? Or does it mostly lead you to withdraw, to watch, to analyze, to wait, to remove yourself from every situation that threatens your comfort? The unspoken objection pushes back. I have already worked so hard. Do not ask me to do more. But awareness without action becomes another form of control. This is not about becoming productive. It is about becoming congruent. Avoidance fragments you by making your inner life sophisticated, while your outer life stays governed by old reflexes. You can meditate for an hour and still betray yourself with a simple yes when you meant no. You can speak about consciousness and still numb at night because your days feel unsafe. Awareness creates a bridge between what you see and what you choose, and that bridge is built through small decisions that cost you something. Notice how quickly the mind tries to find a shortcut here. It says, fine, I will act, I will force myself, I will push through discomfort, I will discipline my way into embodiment. That is another trap because the same avoidance can hide inside intensity. You can use action to avoid feeling, just as you used analysis to avoid feeling. The unspoken objection shifts. If I slow down, the feelings will catch me, so I will stay busy and call it growth. True awareness does not rush, but it does not stall. It does not force, but it does not fantasize. It moves with a steadiness that is difficult to counterfeit. When you act from awareness, your body is included. Your breath stays available. Your speech is simpler. Your decision does not require a performance because it is not trying to convince anyone, including you. The second test is emotional. Avoidance reduces sensation in the name of peace. Awareness increases sensation while increasing capacity to hold it. If you are becoming aware, you may feel more grief, more anger, more tenderness, more fear, more longing. This does not mean you are regressing. It means your system is thawing. The unspoken objection appears immediately. If I feel more, then I am getting worse and I cannot afford to unravel. That objection has authority because many people have been punished for feeling. They learned early that emotion creates consequences, so they trained themselves to be composed. Later, they discover spiritual language that celebrates detachment, and it fits perfectly with their old survival. They call it enlightenment, but it is old self-protection. Awareness does not shame you for this. It exposes it by asking one question. Can you stay present with discomfort without turning it into a story or a shutdown? Avoidance will always prefer the clean conclusion. It will say, I have forgiven, I have released, I have transcended. Awareness will say, I notice my body still tightens when that name appears on my phone. Awareness will say, I notice my chest still collapses when I feel unseen. Awareness will say, I notice I still perform calmness when I'm afraid, and I call it maturity. The difference is that awareness tells the truth even when the truth does not make you look evolved. The third test is identity. Avoidance often protects an identity of being above it all. It protects the identity of being the calm one, the healed one, the aware one. That identity is seductive because it feels like safety through superiority, but it is fragile. The moment you react, shame arrives and you hide again. The unspoken objection is sharp. If I admit I still struggle, then my growth is not real and I will be exposed. Awareness does not need an identity to be valid. It does not require you to be perfect to be true. It is willing to be seen in the messy middle because it is not defending an image. When awareness is present, you can say, I got triggered, and you can still take responsibility. You can say, I avoided that conversation, and you can still return to it. You can say, I shut down, and you can still repair. Avoidance cannot do repair because repair requires contact, and contact threatens the identity of being beyond it. Here is where many people confuse boundaries with avoidance. A boundary is not a wall that keeps life out. A boundary is a line that keeps you in. It is an agreement with yourself that you will not abandon your truth to maintain comfort. Avoidance uses boundaries as an excuse to withdraw without clarity. The unspoken objection says, if I stay in contact, I will be drained. But being drained is often the result of unclear truth, not too much contact. A clean boundary usually makes you more available, not less. It reduces internal conflict because it ends the negotiation. You do not need to disappear to protect yourself when you can speak plainly and leave calmly. Avoidance disappears because it cannot hold consequence. Awareness holds consequence without turning it into a war. This is why awareness can remain kind without being soft and firm without being cruel. Now the pressure returns to a simple premise that still refuses to resolve quickly. Avoidance reduces aliveness to reduce risk. Awareness increases aliveness and teaches you to carry risk. Avoidance seeks immediate peace. Awareness seeks durable coherence. If your practice makes you less human, less warm, less engaged, less responsible, then it may be avoidance wearing spiritual clothing. The unspoken objection is the most honest one. I do not know how to be open without being hurt. You do not solve that by closing more. You solve that by building capacity. Capacity is built in small exposures that you choose, not in dramatic leaps. You tell one truth you have been swallowing. You sit with one feeling without explaining it away. You have one difficult conversation without performing calmness. Then you recover in a way that restores you rather than numbs you. That is how awareness becomes embodied, and embodiment is what makes openness safer. So the difference between awareness and avoidance is not a vibe. It is not a philosophy. It is what happens after you notice. Avoidance notices and then retreats into distance, story, shutdown, or delay. Awareness notices and then stays close enough to choose differently. That closeness will not always feel good at first, because closeness exposes the places where you still flinch, but flinching is information. If you stay with the information, it becomes a doorway. If you escape from it, it becomes your personality. If you want to know which one you are living, do not ask what you believe. Watch what you do when discomfort rises. Watch whether you get clearer or quieter. Watch whether you become more honest or more hidden. Watch whether your practice makes you more capable of love in real time, or more skilled at explaining why you should not have to. The answer will not be clean immediately, and that is part of the point. The spiral does not reward you with instant certainty. It offers you a chance to stop disappearing in the name of being awake. The moment you stop disappearing, the question shifts. It is no longer whether you are aware. It becomes whether you are willing to remain present when awareness costs you something. Avoidance collapses under cost. Awareness begins there. Most people believe avoidance is passive. In reality, it is active, strategic, and often exhausting. It takes effort to maintain distance from what is alive. It takes effort to stay abstract when the body wants to respond. It takes effort to keep meaning ahead of experience, so that experience never fully arrives. That effort is usually invisible because it has been practiced for years, sometimes decades, and it feels like who you are. Awareness interrupts that effort, not by force but by friction. You notice yourself tightening before you speak. You notice yourself explaining when silence would be more honest. You notice yourself smiling to smooth a moment that needs clarity instead. The unspoken objection arises immediately. If I do not manage this, something will break. Awareness does not argue with that fear. It asks you to verify it. Verification requires staying long enough for consequence to appear. Avoidance leaves before consequence. It preemptively resolves the moment by numbing it, reframing it, or postponing it. Awareness stays just long enough to see what actually happens when you do not intervene with the old strategy. Often what happens is less catastrophic than expected, but more revealing. This is where many people confuse regulation with suppression. Regulation expands your capacity to feel without losing choice. Suppression narrows sensation, so choice never needs to be tested. Both can look calm. Only one preserves agency. The difference becomes clear when intensity rises. Regulation allows you to feel more and still respond. Suppression forces you to feel less so you do not have to. If your awareness practice makes intensity disappear rather than become workable, something important is being bypassed. Life does not get less intense as you awaken. It becomes more vivid. You notice subtleties. You register impact faster. You feel the consequences of misalignment sooner. Awareness accelerates feedback. Avoidance slows it down. Many people unconsciously choose avoidance because feedback feels dangerous. Feedback threatens identity. It threatens the story that you are healed, balanced, beyond drama. But awareness is not interested in protecting your image. It is interested in restoring coherence between inner signal and outer action. That coherence cannot be achieved while feedback is muted. Look closely at how avoidance handles responsibility. It reframes responsibility as burden. It speaks about energy, capacity, self-protection, and timing. But beneath those words is a refusal to stay engaged with the consequences of choice. Awareness reframes responsibility as relationship, not obligation but responsiveness. You respond because you are here, not because you owe. When awareness is present, responsibility feels heavier and lighter at the same time. Heavier because you cannot pretend you did not see. Lighter because you stop carrying what is not yours through clarity instead of collapse. Avoidance collapses responsibility into withdrawal. Awareness clarifies responsibility into clean action or clean departure. Departure itself becomes a diagnostic. Avoidance leaves in a way that preserves comfort but creates residue. Conversations feel unfinished. Energy lingers. Guilt or superiority quietly grows. Awareness leaves in a way that completes the moment. Words are spoken. Boundaries are clear. The nervous system may still be activated, but there is no confusion about why you left. This is why awareness is often misunderstood as harsh. It is not harsh, but it is direct. It does not soften truth to maintain harmony. It allows harmony to re-emerge after truth has passed through. Avoidance prioritizes harmony first and pays the price later through resentment, fatigue, or disconnection. Awareness accepts short-term discomfort for long-term coherence. Another vector reveals itself in how you relate to time. Avoidance lives in anticipation and aftermath. It prepares, rehearses, recovers. It rarely inhabits the exact moment where choice is available. Awareness lives in immediacy. Not urgency, but presence. It notices the instant before habit takes over. That instant is uncomfortable because it is empty of scripts. In that empty instant, the unspoken objection becomes loud. I do not know what to do without my patterns. Awareness does not rush to answer. It allows not knowing to remain long enough for a new response to emerge. Avoidance fills the gap immediately with something familiar. Awareness lets the gap teach. This gap is where embodiment deepens. You feel sensations without assigning them meaning. You let breath move without controlling it. You allow impulse to arise without acting on it immediately. That pause is not dissociation. It is contact without compulsion. It is the opposite of avoidance because nothing is being pushed away. When people fear this pause, they often say they are afraid of losing control. But control is already a loss of contact. It is a strategy for managing fear, not resolving it. Awareness does not remove control by force. It reveals how much effort control requires and how much vitality it consumes. Slowly, naturally, control loosens because it becomes inefficient. As control loosens, another objection surfaces. If I am not managing myself, I might hurt someone. This fear is understandable, especially for those who learned early that expression creates harm. But awareness includes ethical sensitivity. It does not unleash impulse blindly. It increases discernment. You feel the difference between expression that is reactive and expression that is true. Avoidance flattens both by silencing them. Discernment grows through feedback, not theory. You speak honestly and notice impact. You adjust without collapsing. You listen without self-erasure. You repair without self-punishment. This iterative process is impossible under avoidance because avoidance cannot tolerate being wrong. Awareness can be wrong and stay present. The capacity to stay present while wrong is a profound marker. Avoidance equates being wrong with being unsafe. Awareness separates the two. You can be wrong and still connected. You can misstep and still belong. This dissolves the need to hide behind observation or superiority. You no longer need to be above the moment to survive it. At this point, awareness begins to feel less like a practice and more like a posture. Not something you do, but how you meet. You meet sensation, you meet conflict, you meet choice. Avoidance always meets the future version of the moment, the one that feels safer. Awareness meets what is actually happening. This meeting does not guarantee comfort. It guarantees honesty. And honesty reorganizes life in ways that comfort cannot. Relationships change. Work shifts. Patterns dissolve. Not because you decided to evolve, but because you stopped interfering with feedback. Life responds to that non-interference with precision. Now the final pressure returns to a quiet truth that still refuses to resolve into a slogan. Awareness is not what you see. It is what you stay with. Avoidance sees and leaves. Awareness sees and remains available. That availability reshapes identity from the inside out. You are no longer the one who understands. You are the one who responds. If you're unsure which one you are living, do not look at your language. Look at your willingness. Are you willing to feel what you notice? Are you willing to speak what you feel? Are you willing to stay present through the consequence of both? If the answer is sometimes, you are already closer to awareness than you think. The spiral does not demand purity. It demands honesty sustained long enough to matter. Avoidance is quick, elegant, and convincing. Awareness is slower, messier, and real.
If this transmission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Vaharat library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.